The question is, what can be preserved and how best to do it?
I think the Ethiopians will fight for their culture, for some aspects of their culture, and won't be taken away from them and they won't lose it. But we don't know what those aspects are. And sometimes we again project what we think is important about their culture and what they ought to preserve with what they really are going to preserve. Ethiopians had a way of having a wedding, and here in this country, they say there's no time, there's no real taste to the way Israelis do their weddings. But they're in Israel, so they make a little bit of a compromise. What they do is they will have the Israeli-style wedding from 7:30 to 11, and then when all of the Israeli or the non-Ethiopian guests go home, then they'll go to a special place, a hall or community center or somebody's house, and they'll dance the night away, and they'll have the foods and the drinks that they were familiar with.
An Ethiopian nightclub in Tel Aviv for immigrants who are finding their footing in their new homeland and gaining the self-confidence to be Ethiopian again, as well as Israeli. This nightclub is one of several businesses springing up around the crowded central bus station. There are also restaurants, a music store, and a beauty salon, all symbols of an emerging independence, indicating a culture still very much alive.
Tradition is vital. Tradition is alive. Tradition is changing. People don't sit around in traditional societies and say, we can't change anything, it's tradition. It's only when you're challenged, it's only when you're threatened that you become aware and say, well, we need to keep things the same. But ultimately, traditions change. The Ethiopian Jews have always changed throughout their history, and there's nothing inauthentic about changing. The important thing is that the Ethiopians be the ones who make the selection of what they wish to keep.
Ethiopian elders participate in an experimental counseling program, an attempt to integrate ancient village traditions into modern society.
The Ethiopians have a very wonderful concept called the father of the soul. And every Ethiopian Jew needed to have a father of his soul, meaning generally a kes, who he could come to talk to deal with his problems, to confess to if something wasn't going well, to get advice from. Now, when the Ethiopian leaves that behind and comes here, there aren't enough kesim to take care of that function. People are spread out in different places. So the Ethiopians, at least the older generation, finds itself sort of bereft.
Often, Ethiopian Jews who sought Israeli advice and guidance found their confusion compounded by the cultural differences and misunderstandings of their Israeli counselors. These Ethiopian counseling sessions reestablished the historical role of elders as fathers of the soul. An ancient village custom survives to remedy decidedly modern problems.
ከዚያ ችግር ከነበረው ሁሉ ችግር ዛሬ ጥቂት ታግሶልን እናገኛለን።
It's been almost a decade since the first wave of Ethiopia's Jews began assimilating with Israeli society. Some have since graduated from the country's universities. Others have joined the armed forces or started small businesses, like this restaurant, where traditional injera is now made in a modern kitchen. In order to survive, each generation of immigrants has had to embrace Israeli culture and move further away from the traditions of their homeland.
I remember what I wanted to do was to know more Hebrew, to know about Israel, to know about the people. So I don't have time to keep my own culture, my own language, my own everything. But now, after 10 years, really I do need to speak sometimes in Amharic, which is Ethiopian language, and maybe to eat Ethiopian dish, and to be somehow Ethiopian, not more Israeli. So now, I'm more Israeli, but I would like to keep my some Ethiopian.
As time passes, virtually every immigrant yearns for the world they left behind, and often they seek to recapture just a little of their past. Back in Ethiopia, the search for the few remaining Jews who were left behind is nearly over. In the village of Walaka, Dr. Rick Hodes delivers antibiotics to a man bitten by a snake. The man is not a Jew, but maintaining goodwill with the non-Jewish villagers is in everyone's interest.
This is the synagogue where people have worshipped for a countless number of years. Now it's been occupied for 1 or 2 years by this family who moved in from Gondar City. Probably within 6 months there will be no more Jews in Ethiopia. It's really a loss, and I hope that the Ethiopian Jews in Israel will get educated and be able to go back and forth, and that both Israel and Ethiopia will benefit from them.
This is perhaps the most thriving Jewish Ethiopian village remaining in Ethiopia. It was constructed in 1990, not in the remote Ethiopian highlands, but within the walls of the Israeli embassy compound in Addis Ababa. The Jews who live and work here are the last vestiges of a people who have now largely disappeared from the Ethiopian landscape. They wait here patiently for the new non-Marxist government to grant them permission to join their relatives already in Israel. Like the thousands who preceded them, it's difficult to anticipate the hardships and challenges which await them. All that matters here is that they be allowed to leave this village behind. Most Ethiopians were unaware that they and their ancestors had coexisted for hundreds of years with the Jewish community. So their absence will probably have little or no impact on the day-to-day lives of their former countrymen. But in Israel, the arrival of Ethiopian Jews was an extraordinary event that captivated the imagination of the whole country. What impact, what contributions might their presence make here?
We can learn patience. To learn to be patient with each other, show respect to each other. To be patient about what's happening around you is an important value, and we don't always have it.
You feel the presence of the Ethiopian by means of his quiet, his silence. He speaks without saying so many words. He makes an impact by just being there, not talking. Personally, I believe that there's a very great power in soft talk and soft words. Maybe there'll be diplomats, maybe there'll be psychologists, something that has to do with interpersonal sensitivity.
They're going to teach us to re-examine many of our basic assumptions about what is Jewishness, what is essential in being an Israeli, what sort of people are we, and where is this country heading as we go into the next generation of Israeli society with a very, very different population from the past.
They have a lot of things to offer to the Israeli society. By their manners, by their politeness, but by the way they control themselves, by their kindness, by the way they are so gentle and so nice, so respectful to each other. Things that in Israel I think we are lacking.
They've gone from Woleka in the 16th century, basically, to within hours to Israel. They've lost their agricultural lifestyle. They've lost their prayers in the Woleka synagogue. Many of them had never seen a telephone, certainly had never seen television. And to deal with this, it's a tremendous strain on them. I mean, with really irreversible consequences. Despite all these problems, and I realize that I'm part of this, and I'm one of the people pushing them into this new society, at their request, we're all very happy that they're in Israel, and we wish them a great future.
A highly developed but ancient people is taking its first tentative step into modern society. The forces in Israel that are overwhelming their old culture are the same forces that are eroding traditional cultures all around the globe. As traditional cultures blend with our modern world, we must all decide what should be sacrificed, but more importantly, what should be, without question, preserved.